Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. I need to get this off my chest. I don't know if what I did was brave or cowardly, but I left. No note, no fight, no goodbye, just gone. And the thing that triggered it? She thought I was asleep. It was sometime around 4 a.m. I remember because the bathroom fan was still running. It hums like a broken refrigerator. I always hear it through the wall. I hadn't slept all night, just laid there, on the edge of the bed, my back to her, my eyes wide open, staring at the pile of unfolded laundry across the room like it was going to speak. And then her voice, whispering, soft, too soft to be casual. I don't love him. I hate being here. I blinked once, twice. She was on the phone. That tone, that intimate, giggly tone. I hadn't heard that in years. It wasn't for me. It hadn't been for a long time. I'm just waiting. Couple more weeks. He's so clueless. You'll know when. I didn't breathe. Not once. I stared at the same pair of socks the whole time, while the woman I married planned her escape with someone else, 2 feet behind me, thinking I was too asleep to hear her betrayal tiptoe out of her throat. She hung up and climbed back into bed like nothing happened, rolled toward me. Her hand rested gently on my back. And I swear, that moment made my skin feel like it didn't belong to me anymore. So I did what no one expects from the guy who apologizes for breathing too loud. I vanished. At 5:12 a.m. I was standing outside in the cold with a duffel bag, my laptop, and my old passport. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't let her see me fall apart. Not again. Not one more morning of pretending I didn't feel the growing hollow in every word she spoke to me. By 6:30, I was on a bus. I don't even remember buying the ticket. My phone was off. The silence was terrifying. And also peaceful. She wouldn't find me. That was the point. She'd wake up, see my side of the bed untouched, and maybe, wonder for the first time in years what I was feeling. But what unfolded next? Let's just say, she wasn't the only one keeping secrets. I didn't sleep the first night. Not a single minute. I stayed in this rundown roadside motel with faded wallpaper and a rusted vending machine that only spat out warm root beer. I sat at the small desk by the window, staring at my phone like it was a live grenade. I didn't touch it. Not once. No calls. No texts. Not even to Wes, my best friend, who I usually told everything to. This wasn't the kind of thing you tell someone over a call. Not when your whole identity has just cracked in half. I kept picturing her face when she realized I was gone. Would she even care? Would she smirk? Relieved the burden finally removed itself? Would she text someone, maybe him, and say, "It's done"? I didn't want answers. I wasn't ready for answers. I just wanted space to feel small and useless without someone watching me fall apart. By noon the next day, I'd found a quiet Airbnb above a small ceramics shop 3 towns away. The old man who ran the place handed me the key with barely a glance. I liked that. No questions. No smiling photos on the wall. Just a room with a bed and a chair and a silence that didn't judge. But it didn't take long for the guilt to creep in. The kind of guilt that doesn't come from doing something wrong, but from being the kind of man who always folds, who never confronts, who disappears instead of speaking up. I started imagining what people would say. That I abandoned my wife. That I ghosted my own life. Maybe I did. That evening, I turned my phone on for exactly 5 minutes. 1 missed call from Delia. 2 texts. The first said, "Where are you?" The second, hours later, "This isn't funny. I'm getting worried." I didn't reply. I turned the phone off again and shoved it under the pillow. Because as awful as it sounds, I wasn't worried. Not about her. I was curious. Curious how fast someone who claimed to hate me would crumble the second she lost control. The next morning, something happened that shook me more than her whispered betrayal. I checked the camera feed. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy, but we had one of those smart doorbells back home, and I still had access to it. I just wanted to see if she left for work. That's all. But what I saw instead, she opened the front door and stood there. Just stood. Not frantic. Not angry. She had a coffee mug in one hand and her phone in the other. She looked around the empty porch like she was trying to remember something. Then she sat down on the top step and stared out at the street. She stayed there for nearly 45 minutes. It was weird. Too calm. Too calculated. And it hit me then. She wasn't scared. She was waiting. For him? For me? Or maybe for the right moment to rewrite the narrative before anyone else could. And I swear, for a second I almost went back. I almost convinced myself that I'd imagined everything. That the 4 a.m. call was just a bad dream. That maybe she didn't say she hated me. Maybe I heard it wrong. But I knew the truth. You don't imagine betrayal. You don't hallucinate hatred from the lips of the person who shares your bed. I stayed. I kept watching. Not just the doorbell cam, but her. Because what she did next set a chain reaction in motion I never could have predicted. I hadn't planned on spying, I really hadn't. But when I logged into the doorbell camera feed again the next day, just to check if she'd left for work, I noticed something strange. There was a brown paper grocery bag left on our front porch. No name. No delivery receipt. Nothing. Delia came out around 8:30 a.m. Still in pajamas, her hair unbrushed, and just stared at it. She didn't pick it up. She didn't even touch it. She circled it, like it might explode. Then, slowly, she kicked it with her foot and left it there. 2 hours later, it was gone. That's when I started wondering if this was more than just emotional betrayal. Maybe it wasn't just me she was playing games with. Maybe there were more layers, more people involved. Because you don't react like that to a grocery bag if everything in your life is clean. I became obsessed with that porch. Every morning, I'd sip lukewarm gas station coffee while watching the live feed. And every morning, there was something new. An envelope tucked under the doormat that Delia burned in the kitchen sink. A guy in a hoodie who rang the bell but walked away before she opened it. A woman who dropped off a key in an unmarked envelope, then speed-walked back to a silver car with a dent in the door. It wasn't fear I felt watching all this. It was something worse. I felt like I'd been living inside a carefully scripted version of my own life. Like every date, every anniversary, every shared laugh had been rehearsed. And now that I'd stepped off stage, the other actors were still playing their parts without me, as if I was never real in the first place. One night, I made a mistake. I turned my phone back on for too long. And this time, the voicemail came through. Delia's voice was shaking. Not sad. Not apologetic. Just off. Trent, I need you to listen. Please. I know you think you heard something, and maybe you did. But it's not what you think. Just come back. Okay. Let's talk. It's complicated. But you know me. You know me. I stared at the wall for what felt like an hour after that. Because no, I didn't know her. Not anymore. The woman I knew didn't whisper to someone else in our bed while pretending I was asleep. The woman I knew didn't get secret packages and torch mail in the sink like she was hiding from the FBI. Still, part of me, pathetically, deeply, wanted to believe her. So, I did something that I'm still ashamed of. I used the second camera feed. The one she forgot about. The tiny one in the smoke detector in the kitchen. I'd installed it back when we had a break-in scare, and I'd never taken it down. She probably didn't even remember it existed. I hadn't used it in years. That night, at 11:43 p.m., she walked into the kitchen with a bottle of wine and a half-burned note. She unfolded it, stared at it, and whispered to herself. Then she laughed. Low, dark. Let's see how long you can stay hidden, sweetheart. I stopped the video. My blood felt like cold syrup. What did that mean? Was she talking to me? About me? Or someone else? I didn't know. But what I did know was this. Delia wasn't waiting for me out of love or guilt. She was waiting for something else entirely. And whatever it was, it had already begun. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept rewinding that single sentence. Let's see how long you can stay hidden, sweetheart. It echoed in my head like it had teeth. I played it back on the footage 3 times, hoping I'd imagine the malice in her voice, hoping maybe it had been sarcasm or sadness or just anything other than what it felt like. But no matter how I squinted or turned up the volume, it landed the same, like a threat wrapped in sugar. The next morning, I walked down to the cafe 2 blocks from the ceramics shop I was staying above. I needed a distraction, something normal. The barista asked me if I wanted oat milk in my coffee, and I swear, I almost cried. That's how thin I'd become. A grown man unraveling because someone offered him a dairy alternative. When I got back to the room, a small cardboard box was sitting outside my door. No postage. No name. Just a single word scribbled in Sharpie across the top. Trent. My legs went cold. I didn't even open the door first. I stood in the hallway, holding that box like it was radioactive. My brain was racing. How did she find me? Had someone followed me? Was this from her? Or from him? I brought it inside, locked the door, pulled the blinds, and sat on the floor with it in front of me like it might bite. I waited 10 minutes before I even cut the tape. My hands were shaking. Inside was a yellow notepad with the first page torn off, a flash drive, and a folded photograph. No letter. No explanation. I opened the photo first. It was us, me and Delia, at that fall festival 3 years ago. She had her arm around me, fake pumpkin spice lattes in both our hands. I was smiling like an idiot. She wasn't looking at the camera, though. She was looking over my shoulder at something else? Or maybe someone. I hadn't noticed it at the time. But in the bottom corner, barely visible, was a reflection in the booth's shiny apple cider sign. A man, staring, sunglasses, clean-shaven, unfamiliar, but too close, too intentional. I shoved the photo aside and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. There were 2 files. One was labeled kitchen_08-13. The other, office_02-09. I clicked the kitchen file first. It was a video, security footage. Not from my system, from hers. A camera I didn't know existed. It showed Delia in the kitchen at night, wearing my hoodie, barefoot, pouring a glass of wine. She walked to the cabinet, opened a tin I didn't recognize, pulled out a folder, and flipped through it. Dozens of photos, notes, printed emails. But it was the last 5 seconds that hit like a hammer. She took a lighter from the drawer, lit one of the papers on fire, and whispered, "He'll never see this. Not while I'm still ahead." The second file? That was worse. That one showed Delia in our home office, on a video call, with the same man from the photo booth reflection. "He's still gone," she said, brushing her hair behind her ear like it was a performance. "No contact. I think it's working. He's either scared or stupid. Or both." The man laughed. "Keep feeding the panic. The longer he's gone, the cleaner the break." I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like I'd swallowed thunder. This wasn't just cheating. This was coordinated, deliberate, and I had no idea how deep it went. I thought disappearing would hurt her. Instead, it exposed something far darker than I ever imagined. And the scariest part? I still had no idea what she really wanted, or what she was planning next. For the next 24 hours, I didn't open the door. I didn't eat. I didn't answer the texts that started trickling in from unknown numbers. Just random lines like, "Are you ready to come home yet?" Or, "You saw it. So what now?" The kind of messages that turn your veins into ice water. Every creak outside made me flinch. Every buzz of my phone felt like an alarm going off in my chest. I didn't know who to trust. I couldn't even trust myself anymore. At one point, I tried calling Wes, just to hear a voice I remembered from my old life. The number went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. Then I checked his Facebook. His profile was gone. Not deactivated, wiped. Like he'd never existed. That's when I realized just how alone I actually was. I stayed up all night again. Around 4 a.m. I finally left the apartment just to walk, to breathe. I kept my hood up, my head down. The air was cold enough to burn, and my fingers ached by the time I turned the corner past a closed bakery and headed back toward the main street. That's when I saw him, leaning against a rusted blue sedan across from the cafe. Same sunglasses, same clean-shaven face. The man from the photo, from the video call, from her life. He was real. He looked at me, just once. Didn't move, didn't speak. just held my gaze like he knew exactly how far I'd fallen and was waiting for the last crack to form. I did the only thing I could. I ran, like a child, through back alleys, past dumpsters, through someone's backyard. I didn't stop until I was back in the apartment with my back pressed against the door like it could keep the world out. Later that day, I found a note under my door. No envelope, no signature, just 5 words in block letters. You're not supposed to run. I read it once, twice, then crumpled it into my fist and sat on the floor, staring at the front door for hours, waiting for it to open. The next morning, a voicemail came through. Delia's voice, calm, almost sweet. I hope you're safe, Trent. Really, I do. I know this is confusing, but you shouldn't have watched the videos. That was never part of the plan. You don't have all the pieces yet. Not even close. But you will. Soon. I deleted the message, but her voice stayed in my ears like a splinter under my skin. This wasn't about love anymore, or betrayal, or some secret affair. This was something else entirely, and I was no longer sure if I was a victim, or if I had been part of something all along without realizing it. All I knew was that the rules had changed, and I had just become a problem someone wanted to solve. I didn't leave the apartment for 2 more days. Every time I walked past the window, I imagined that man leaning against the sedan again, waiting, watching, bored with how slowly I was falling apart. I kept thinking about that note, "You're not supposed to run." The phrasing stuck with me. Not don't run, but not supposed to. Like I'd broken a rule in a script I didn't know I was reading from. Like everything was part of a plan, and I'd wandered off the stage. On the 3rd night, the power flickered. Not out completely, just long enough to kill the heat and reset the clock on the microwave. When it came back on, I noticed something strange. The ceramic shop downstairs had its lights on, which wasn't unusual. But the back hallway behind the shelves? Lit up like someone was inside, moving boxes. The shop owner, Mr. Tiller, was supposed to be away for the week, visiting his daughter in Pennsylvania. He'd told me that himself when I paid for the extra nights. And yet, there was movement. Subtle. Intentional. Not the creaky, slow kind of shuffle that old men do. This was someone who knew exactly where to step. Curiosity got the better of fear. I put on my shoes, grabbed my key, and went down the back stairs, quietly, skipping the ones that always squeaked. When I reached the back corner near the delivery door, I paused. Silence. Nothing. Until I heard it. A click. Then the unmistakable sound of something sliding inside a wall. I waited. A few minutes later, the lights went dark again. Total silence. I slipped into the shop and followed the sound. There was a panel in the wall behind a display of mismatched coffee mugs. It looked like it had been opened and resealed dozens of times. Almost casually, I pushed on it gently. It moved. And behind it, a shallow cavity, maybe 8 inches deep, just wide enough to hold a folder wrapped in a layer of plastic. I pulled it out, closed the wall, ran upstairs. Inside the folder was a single word scribbled across the top page. Observer. The file was thick. Documents, surveillance photos, names, dates. There were pictures of me, in places I didn't remember being. One of me exiting a hardware store in March 2022. One from my work parking lot the year before. Then Delia, sitting with people I didn't recognize, leaning too close, laughing with someone in military uniform. Another page listed a timeline of movements, with color-coded tags I didn't understand. C2 confirmed, Echo flagged, target shift approved. I flipped through faster. There were receipts, email printouts, floor plans, a photo of our house, one of our backyard, one of the shed I hadn't opened in 3 years. The last page was blank, except for a short handwritten line in red ink. He still doesn't know what he was part of. I stared at that sentence for 10 straight minutes, not moving, barely breathing. The walls of the room felt smaller, my legs numb, my mouth dry. I didn't know what I was part of. What had I been part of? What if Delia wasn't cheating? Not in the traditional sense. What if none of this had been about love or hate or betrayal at all? What if I had been planted? Programmed? Used? The question wasn't whether I'd made a mistake leaving. The question now was whether I was ever meant to leave at all. I couldn't stop staring at the file. Observer. That word crawled under my skin like it had always been there, waiting. I must have read that red ink sentence 100 times. He still doesn't know what he was part of. It was terrifying in its simplicity. I wasn't just in the dark. I was drowning in it. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The room felt wrong. Like I was breathing recycled air. Like someone had flipped the script on my life and left me reading someone else's lines. Around 5 a.m., I got up and did something reckless. I turned my phone back on, fully. Location, Bluetooth, everything. If they were tracking me, then so be it. I was done hiding from ghosts. It didn't take long. At 7:16 a.m., I got a text from a number labeled only as unknown. Finally, that was it. No follow-up, no context. But I knew exactly what it meant. I left the apartment 30 minutes later and drove to the one place Delia had always avoided talking about. Her late uncle's property out by the water. A rundown cabin 2 hours north that she claimed was nothing but mold and rodents. I'd only ever seen one photo of it. But I remembered the coordinates. They were scribbled on a post-it once, stuck to her old planner, quickly ripped off when I asked. I don't know what possessed me to go there. Maybe I thought I'd find more files. Maybe some explanation. Or maybe just a physical anchor to prove any of this was real and not just some breakdown in my head. The place looked like something out of a forgotten movie set. Shingles falling off the roof, windows boarded up, porch rotting in the corners. But the door was unlocked. Not kicked in. Not forced. Just open. Inside, everything was staged like a half-finished scene. A radio playing soft static. A single chair facing the window. A corkboard filled with maps and red string connecting faces I didn't recognize. Some had my face next to them. One had my driver's license photo clipped beneath a tab labeled primary. There was a tape recorder on the floor. No note. Just a post-it on the recorder. Press play. I did. First just silence. Then a click. Then her voice. Not Delia. Someone else. A woman. Calm, measured, too professional to be casual. Subject 12 relocated without protocol. Observer compromised. Situation developing. He still believes he left on his own. I stood frozen, mouth dry, heart stuttering. I didn't understand any of it. Subject 12? Was that me? What protocol? What observer? Then came the second voice. Familiar. Too familiar. A voice I knew better than my own. Delia. Let him keep running. He's doing exactly what we expected. Click. That was it. I dropped the recorder and stumbled backward, knocking over a metal box filled with burned Polaroids. In every single one, I was in the background. Walking. Sitting. Talking. All of them taken from a distance like I'd been studied. Documented. Maybe for years. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't even cry. My entire marriage. My entire life was suddenly suspect. My memories weren't memories. They were fragments of something scripted. I wasn't betrayed. I was activated. And now that I had run, I had started a process I didn't understand. The only thing I knew now was that I was never supposed to know. I drove for hours after leaving the cabin, but I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't scared. I was hollow but focused. For the first time in weeks, I felt strangely clear. Like everything in my life had shattered and the quiet left behind was finally giving me room to breathe. I didn't go back to the apartment above the ceramic shop. I didn't go back to Delia. I drove somewhere she never touched. My childhood town, where the streets still had cracks in the same places they did when I was a kid. I booked a cheap room above a bookstore where the Wi-Fi barely worked and the only rule was to pay in cash. I bought a journal. I wrote pages and pages. Not about what Delia did or what she might have been part of, but about me. What I'd let slide. What I'd ignored. What I pretended to believe in so I didn't have to confront how wrong everything felt. The cheating didn't break me. The lies didn't either. It was the realization that I had stopped trusting my own instincts somewhere along the way. That was the real betrayal. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. I got an email from Wes. The subject line just said, I never disappeared. He had never been deleted, just locked out. Silenced. Delia had been intercepting things. He told me everything he knew. She'd been working with a consulting firm that dealt in behavioral analytics. They studied people like me, creatures of habit, high empathy, predictable, loyal. I was never a threat. I was just part of the formula. And then one day, I stopped playing along. But here's the thing. None of it mattered anymore. I closed the laptop, booked a train to the coast. I spent the next month watching waves crash and trying to remember what it was like to be quiet without being afraid. I started sketching again. I built a tiny online shop selling hand-drawn postcards and vintage maps. I started waking up before sunrise because I wanted to. And then, one morning, I looked at my reflection and didn't flinch. I didn't get revenge. I didn't confront Delia. I didn't need to, because healing, real healing, isn't about getting answers. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs them. If you told me back then that I'd be okay, that I'd smile again on my own, in some sleepy town where no one knew my name, I wouldn't have believed you. But here I am, alive, free, whole. Thank you for staying through to the end of this story. If you've ever experienced something in life that completely shifted your understanding of reality, or uncovered a truth that shocked you, share your story in the comments. Whether it's personal, historical, or just a wild coincidence, we want to hear it. You're on Reddit Confessions, where the strangest stories are always real. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us, what's one moment in history that changed the way you see the world? See you in the next confession.